Okay, we're going to start with the epidermal ridges and dermal ridges. If you look at this slide right here, this is a chunk of skin. This is actually on the fingertips, or this is thick skin. This is showing you an epidermal ridge and dermal ridges. Dermal ridges are ridges in the dermis. This isn't a very good slide of dermal ridges, but it shows you a very good epidermal ridge, and would be a bump in the epidermis. So if you see a bump in the epidermis, it's an epidermal ridge. If you were to see a bump in the dermis, I don't really see a bump in the dermis here, maybe one of these, it's called a dermal ridge. But when you see bumps in the dermis, like a big bump in the dermis, just call it a dermal ridge. If you see a bump in the epidermal ridge, call it an epidermal ridge. Um, these bumps in dermal ridges lead to bumps in epidermal ridges, and then those give us what we call our friction ridges. And friction ridges, when we have friction ridges, those leave behind fingerprints. And so I'll show you the next slide, which will show you our friction ridges. But then we have our dermal papillae. Papilla is singular, papillae plural. So these papillae are those nipples that stick up in the keratinized stratified squamous epithelium layer. So remember, this is our epidermis up here, and this is our dermis down below. So these are the dermal papillae here. This is that areolar connective tissue. See this areolar connective tissue? So here are the friction ridges. Here are what we would leave behind as a fingerprint. These are our friction ridges here. And those are caused by the underlying dermal ridges and the epidermal ridges. Now what you see here, these are cleavage lines. All these red things are cleavage lines. They tend to run vertically in the limbs and horizontally in the trunk and in the neck. And the cleavage lines are just how the collagen fibers run in the underlying dermis. And they tend to represent separations in those collagen fiber bundles in the reticular region of the dermis. And so they're just running in a particular pattern, and it's important to us if we're going into surgery, because our surgeons are going to cut parallel to those lines, and so then you'll resist scarring. So a surgeon wouldn't come in and cut vertically with these cleavage lines unless they had to, because then you would scar. Now, flexure lines are areas where the dermis is going to be held tightly to those underlying structures of the joints. So at the palms or the back of your knees or in your elbows, those are flexure lines. You see they're like deep creases, and your skin doesn't slide very easily over those regions. That's what flexure lines are. Now when it comes to skin color is interesting. We're all a different color, but it's really due to our melanocytes and three different pigments. Our melanocytes, recall, are those cells that are found in the stratum basale of our epidermis, and they produce different kinds of one pigment called melanin, and different amounts of that melanin. All humans have the same number of melanocytes, regardless of what color we are, but we produce different kinds of melanin and different amounts of melanin. And then when we produce that melanin, then we might degrade it at different rates. We might break it down faster. Some of us keep a tan longer, in other words, some of us break it down faster. Now here are the three different pigments that contribute to skin color. Melanin, and melanin can be yellow to brown to brownish red to black. There's keratin. We do not produce keratin. Our melanocytes do produce melanin. Keratin, we do not produce keratin. Keratin is a pigment that's yellow to orange, and it's found in plants. But if we eat enough keratin, it can change our... So yellow, you'll turn yellow if you eat enough plants. Hemoglobin, it's another pigment. So pigment, our melanocytes don't produce hemoglobin. Our hemoglobin is actually found inside of our red blood cells. But if we don't produce a lot of melanin, say we're, very very pale, then we can see our hemoglobin that's in our blood through our skin, and so we appear pink to red, so we can see hemoglobin. So these are the three pigments that really influence our skin color. Now, if you're, say, Asian, you're going to produce melanin that's more yellow. Everybody has a different skin tone. We're producing different colors of melanin. We all, remember, have the same number of melanocytes. Now, melanin is produced from one amino acid. You just link tyrosine together to produce melanin. So it's a really simple molecule, very simple molecule. Later on, we'll talk about a cancer of the melanocytes, melanoma. So now, there are different homeostatic imbalances all throughout your chapter. Every time you see a homeostatic imbalance, focus in on it. Here are some colors due to homeostatic imbalance. Say you're cyanotic. The term cyanosis means blue. If you turn blue, it's due to lack of oxygen. If you're a dark-skinned person, if you're very dark skinned, if you're African American, you won't turn blue because you're a very dark-skinned person. You might see the blue coloration in the lips, the mucous membranes, and the nail beds, but the blue coloration will be due to lack of oxygen. Erythema, that is due to, that's a red coloration of the face, say, due to embarrassment or allergies, exercise, or it could be fever. It could be a red color anywhere on the body due to inflammation. Say you have a red patch on your arm due to a big inflamed wound that you have. The term pallor or blanching is white, when you turn white due to fear, say, if you're scared out of your wits, or it could be because you're extremely anemic or you have low blood pressure. There's some other reasons that you could turn white. Jaundice. Jaundice is a yellowing of your skin and your eyes due to a bilirubin accumulation. Bilirubin is the breakdown of red blood cells. It's actually the breakdown of heme, that portion of your red blood cells. And jaundice is usually due to liver problems or an undeveloped liver, as it is in newborns when they develop jaundice. If you have a bronzing tone to your skin, that indicates Addison's disease or a pituitary tumor, usually a benign pituitary tumor. And bruising. Bruising is when you break a blood vessel and blood escapes into the nearby area. But the term hematoma indicates a larger bruise, a larger collection of blood. Okay, we're getting into the appendages. There are many appendages in your skin, and all of the appendages that we're about to talk about derived from the epidermis. Sweat glands were made in the epidermis, and then they reside in the dermis. Sweat glands are also called sudoriferous glands, and they're controlled by your sympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system is the nervous system that's called your fight or flight system. That means when you're scared, you decide whether you fight or you flee from the situation, but we just call it in this class your sympathetic nervous system. There are two types of sweat glands. They're called the eccrine sweat glands or your apocrine sweat glands. The eccrine ones are the ones that are more numerous, and they're all over your body. They're mostly all over your body. They're not going to be found on your lips or nipples, but they're mostly all over your body, and they're very numerous. They're for thermoregulation, for heat control. They're very abundant on your palms, soles of your feet, and forehead. And again, they're controlled by the sympathetic nervous system. And the sweat that the eccrine sweat glands produce is hypotonic. Not as many solutes as you would find in the blood. This secretion is coming from the blood, from blood filtrate. It's 99% water. There's salt in there, vitamin C, antibodies, nitrogenous waste like urea. And there's a product called dermcidin, which is an antimicrobial peptide. And the pH of sweat is acidic, pH of between 4 and 5, and that helps to fight off microbes. Now the other sweat glands are called apocrine sweat glands, and they're only found in the axillary and anogenital regions. These sweat glands are activated by hormones. They're activated at puberty. The hormone that activates them, the main hormone, is called testosterone. Females and males produce this hormone at puberty, and the place where you produce this hormone is your adrenal glands. That's why females have these as well, because most males and females have adrenal glands. And although they're activated by testosterone, these apocrine sweat glands are controlled by the sympathetic nervous system. So the apocrine secretions, the sweat produced in your axillary regions and your anogenital regions, same sweat, except for you add some fatty acids and some proteins, which turn the sweat a little milky, not like yummy milk, but we're talking a little white milky, or a little yellow. And what happens is when you sweat this out, the bacteria that are already living on your skin like the fatty acids and the protein, and so they start eating the fatty acids and the protein, and that produces a rank smell, which is called body odor. So there are some more appendages in the skin that were derived in the epidermis and reside in the dermis. The sebaceous glands, those are your oil glands, and they secrete sebum. That's a fancy word for oil. These guys, just like the apocrine glands, are only active at puberty, and they're activated by testosterone, by the androgens. Now the sebaceous glands, lucky for us, they're not found on the palms of our hands or our soles of our feet, because it would be very slick for us walking around if we had oil on our feet, or the palms of our hands were greasy. That would be hard. These are our only holocrine glands. All of our exocrine glands are classified as merocrine glands. These are our only holocrine glands. And the sebum that's secreted by our sebaceous glands, it's there to soften and lubricate our hair and skin. It might be a little obnoxious to us when we break out with acne, but it's good for us, the sebum. You'll know later on in life when you start drying out how bad it is. Sebum has bactericidal properties, so that's a good thing. All the oil that we produce fights off bad bacteria. We have a lot of good bacteria living on us, but it helps to fight bad bacteria. In the case of acne, if you have a lot of acne, it is good to go to a dermatologist, because acne is truly a problem, usually a streptococcal problem. So if you have acne, please go to the dermatologist. They'll help. On mammary glands. For mammary glands are specialized sweat glands that produce milk. So we'll get to those later on in the second semester. But the mammary glands, well, they're located in the breast of males and females, both males and females. Ceruminous glands line your external ear canal, and they secrete a product called cerumen, which is earwax. So ceruminous glands secrete cerumen. Here's a picture of a hair follicle, and on that hair follicle we have a sebaceous gland, so you probably saw this in lab. Here's that sebaceous gland again, and then here's what an eccrine sweat gland looks like, and here is when we take a little section through it, and that's what you've probably seen that in lab as well. Same picture, same picture. Okay, we'll do hair in the next lecture.